Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here. So my name is Ashley. I am one of the co-founders here at Campfire Coworks. And Jasmine is going to be joining us and presenting today. She's also a co-founder here at Campfire Coworks. And again, thank you to the DDA for providing breakfast for us this morning. So wonderful, and welcome everybody. We are also broadcasting live on YouTube, just so everyone is wondering why I'm talking to my computer a lot. That is why. So we welcome everyone. And if you're listening to the replay, be sure to click the links in the description. Make sure to follow us on socials. Also, please join our Discord community. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us there, and also on our socials to follow. This is the first in a series of 4 that we'll be doing on social media and how to keep growing your business with social media. So we're going to kind of discuss a little bit of the basics first. We have a Notion document that we are going to share with everyone that's in attendance today. And also, if you are listening in later and live and would like to purchase the template to use, you can contact us at support@campfirecoworks.com, and we can go ahead and get you access to this. So the documentation is going to include the checklist of action steps, a little bit of an overview, the recording from today, as well as a link to the tools that we recommend or would use in accordance to this presentation. And also the Discord link can be found in that as well. So make sure to join the Discord community, and that way we can help you continue to move forward if you have questions as you're going through the process later on. So Jasmine is going to share the presentation today, just so everyone kind of knows the format. She'll present, we'll have the overview of everything going on, and then we'll have some of the walkthrough on the checklist, some of the tools we'll talk about that we would recommend, which you can find in that Notion document, and then we'll do a Q&A if anyone has any questions. And we'll also wrap up with if anyone is interested in doing the next session, to let us know. Again, tickets will be available at the door for the next round of things. We'll also be repeating this on Friday, same presentation as today for those who couldn't make it. So I'll leave it over to Jazz.
All right. Hi, welcome. I'm Jasmine. I'm also one of the co-founders here at Campfire. My primary background is in revenue operations, so I typically help small businesses with generating new revenue lines, and a lot of times that comes from understanding marketing is a huge piece of that. So today we're going to start off with the basics, but really I like to take it back before we go forward. A lot of people get into social media, they get really excited about let's just jump in, let's post. I have all these really great ideas. They start seeing, graphics, they start reading about all these strategies. And a lot of the problem is that they haven't really fundamentally started from like the beginning. What are the goals? Why are you actually posting on social media? So kind of just to kind of kick it off here, let me go ahead and get into my presentation. Over the next 4 weeks, basically we want to kind of break it down into 4 big sections. The first section is just getting started in the fact of goal setting. So before we even start thinking about what you're going to post and how that's going to, affect your business, we first have to figure out what are you trying to accomplish with doing a social media strategy in the first place. Then after we kind of figured out what the goals look like, we'll move into strategic planning in week 2. We'll kind of talk about, hey, here are the goals that I want to accomplish. How do I actually go about accomplishing them? And then in week 3, once we have already kind of put together a strategy, we'll talk about how do we execute that strategy? What does that look like as far as time commitment and resources and tools? And then the last week, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about analyzing and adjusting. So just like any marketing strategy, social media works the same way. You basically are going to be on a constant pattern of reiterating. You're going to be planning, you're going to go do those things, you're going to be checking what happened, and then you're going to be adjusting that plan until you get the results that you're looking for. So that's just pretty a little bit of a layout of what the next 4 weeks are going to look like. And then we can kind of jump in a little bit to what this week is, which is going to be talking about how do we actually create an effective and relevant content strategy for online. So starting off here, some key takeaways. So first of all, I'd just like to ask everybody, are you on social media already? Are you already marketing to your to your customers? Okay. Do you have a plan? Yeah.
Yeah, good plan. Grow a membership base.
Okay.
Really more like a goal than a plan, I think.
Okay. So what kind of goal? Like what are you hoping to accomplish with your social media?
Increase followers.
Okay.
So increase our reach and also
Okay.
convert those to sales.
Okay. Perfect. So this is a really great place to start because a lot of people, it's really coming down to beginning with the end in mind. A lot of people don't even really know that when they get started. They sometimes they just want to be like, I want to make sales, but they don't really know how does that process work? How do I actually go from this post that I created about this thing turns into someone actually purchasing my product? So we want to talk about those kinds of things because you may want to get sales, but there's a whole funnel that comes before someone actually converts. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that funnel looks like, and that your social media strategy in the beginning might actually not be posting anything about your products in the beginning. It might actually just be coming about making awareness. Are people even aware that your brand exists, and building that trust with your followers, so to speak, before we actually start thinking about, hey, buy my product. That's typically one of the number one reasons people actually disengage from people's social media, when all it becomes is just a advertising board for all the things that they have. And so, our customer base is getting smarter and smarter every day. And so they really want to build engagement. They want to know what problem you're fixing for them. And that's why they're going to engage with you. So we're going to kind of talk through, there is basically a rubric for creating SMART goals. So basically I'll walk through that in a minute. We'll actually talk about the social, like the funnel, the breakdown. What does that actually look like? And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end about who the target audience is, because this foundation is going to set us up for next week when we're actually looking at strategically planning out our social media strategy. So going into, like I said, do you have a plan? So, obviously you either plan to fail or you don't plan at all. So, this is our number one issue that I find that most people, when I talk to them about social media, typically our first interaction with social media is as a user. We had a social media account to some degree, and we've engaged with other people's brands, and we've engaged with people in a social media, but we haven't really specifically made content for other people. We're typically making content for ourselves. Whatever makes me happy. I want to post about my food today, I'll post about my food. If I want to post about what I'm thinking about, I'll post about what I'm thinking about. However, when you move into the business world and we start creating social media, it no longer is about you, it's about your customer. And so a lot of businesses, when it comes to marketing in general, where they get it wrong is that you're not going to be the hero of the story. Your customers are going to be the hero of the story. You need to position yourself as the guide of the story. So your product or your service needs to empower the customer or user to overcome a problem or create a victory to some degree. That's what's going to motivate them to actually buy your product. So a lot of people, what ends up happening, old school marketing used to say like, no, my product is going to come save the day for you. Like I have XYZ, it's going to fix all your problems. And when you position as the hero is typically the weak character in the story complex. So a hero sees another hero, they go like, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who's going to teach me how to not have this problem anymore. I want to solve this problem. I don't want someone to fix it today. I want to learn how to fix it forever, and I want to be done with it. So, this comes into this whole aspect of, again, like I said, what are you trying to actually do? So are you trying to increase your brand awareness? Are you at the stage where maybe you're building engagement? Are you trying to, at the point where you're ready to sell your products? Maybe you're just trying to get customer feedback. I mean, the biggest place that people are going to now to actually express what they feel about your product or services are going to probably be a social media channel of some sort, whether that's a Google review, whether that's on Facebook. So this gives you an opportunity to interact with your customers. Are you using your social media as a way to provide customer service? Or are you actually looking just to advertise and promote your products? So each one of these different categories actually leads to a different strategy when it comes to social media. if you're looking to grow your brand's influence, you're going to actually be looking for different metrics than you would be if you were trying to decide whether or not people are buying or selling your products. So understanding what that goal is to start with is going to help you create better content that's going to actually allow you to actually execute on those objectives. So going into understanding the buyer's journey. So just like I said before, depending on what you're looking at accomplishing, you need to figure out where are you in your social media journey. Are you in the building awareness stage? Are you in the consideration stage, the decision-making stage, the adoption stage, or the advocacy stage? So basically, you have to understand that buyers are not always customers. Like someone first has to buy into your idea or your mission or your value long before they're actually going to purchase a product from you. They typically say it takes between 5 to 7 touch points before someone is at a point where they're willing to actually purchase your product. So in that process, you have all these opportunities to be creating content around making them aware that you have this content, building trust with your potential buyers, helping them make more decisions. And then those who actually have purchased your product, like that's not where the sales cycle ends today. Old school sales was, closing deals. New school sales is opening relationships. So the goal is today not to actually end that cycle as soon as someone's purchased. The cycle continues into helping them become, advocacy. You want them to have evangelism. You want them actually going out and sharing your content. And that might even be a part of your strategy, is that, a lot of times people, they just want to keep adding more people to the top of the funnel, where they might want to get down to this level and think about turning your marketing strategy into like user generated content. Are you getting your customers who already use and love your product? Are you helping them now flood your marketing channels with your products and services and expanding your reach beyond just the traditional, hey, I'm going to go out and market to the people I already have, or utilize things like paid advertisement. So that's a whole new strategy that a lot of people are using now, is using things like influencer marketing, tapping into other channel partners. So now that we kind of talked a little bit about through the funnel, we actually need to think about getting into the specifics of how do I actually start setting the actual goal. So instead of having a vague goal of, hey, I want to increase my followers, right? We actually want to start getting into like how specific, how many followers, in what time frame are we talking about? What type of followers am I looking at? Am I looking at trying to just have a general people, or am I trying to specifically hit a niche of people in my follower base? Looking at how can you actually measure that? Are you measuring it, via like, if you have followers, are you just looking at just the followers that you have, or are you trying to make sure that those followers are engaging on your content? So trying to think about being as specific as you can when you start, when you want to run a strategy. It's really about creating like what, in the world of creative design is called like sprints. Our goal is you should be setting a specific goal. You should be figuring out what specifically you want to do, how you're going to measure it, making sure that it's achievable. You don't want to be like, oh, I want to get 1 million followers, next month. Probably not achievable. You might be able to if you're willing to pay enough money to get some influencers, but realistically, you want to think about what could you achieve. And when you're thinking about achievement, is thinking about like your personal talent, like, are you capable of doing all of the content that's going to be needed to make that happen? Do you have the budget for that? If not, so kind of looking at the full scope of, is it attainable? Is it relevant? So basically, is it realistic? Is it worth it? Like, you may be able to get 1,000 likes, but are those likes going to actually turn into something that actually was worth your time to have done that project, or you made that investment? Part of the social media strategy, like when we made the graphic for this exact event, is I had a picture on a hamster wheel and I'm running after trying to get likes and followers and trying to figure out sales. And that's a lot of times what it can feel like if you don't really have a plan, because you're just putting content out there, just hoping that something will work and not really knowing what will work and won't work and why it didn't work. So there's a lot of psychology that goes into typically the marketing aspect of social media. But I also don't believe that in our time frame, I don't think there's ever been a medium of marketing that's been more accessible to even the smallest of business just getting started, to have access to the psychographics and the psychology of the buyers on a platform. The platforms give you so many tools to be able to figure out who your followers actually are and which ones are actually interested in your products and likely to actually convert. So that part you have a lot of control over without even having to bring in necessarily an expert. There's a lot of information around that. However, it can also get confusing because there is a lot of information around social media. And then the last one is just being time bound, like putting some kind of a limitation on your actual goal. You know, it's easy to overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 10 years, right? But you still need to have those little tiny milestones along the way to help make sure that you are staying within the confinements of actually hitting your goal. And I often like how they demonstrate it, where they say, like, if you were to put a chalk line out, the farther you go out with your chalk line and the farther you're off just 1 degree, the wider and the longer you are off in the long run. So you can be off just 2 degrees over a 10-inch period, probably not going to be noticeable, but that 2 degrees over a 10-mile could actually become hundreds of miles of difference of how far you're off from where you were hoping to be. So it's just important that you put some time-bound constraints on it and you actually are making micro adjustments as you're trying to grow your plan. Not to mention, we just live in a very volatile market right now, where you also need to be able to pivot. So being able to have these shorter goals allows you to reevaluate, is what you're doing even relevant? Like, you may be doing something today, and less than 3 months from now, the thing you're doing is no longer relevant. It doesn't make sense. You probably don't want to keep running that marketing goal for another 3 to 6 months for no reason. So just trying to help people to have shorter time frames, but also having an adult time frame and marketable in that way. So just kind of going through some questions for you to kind of think about. So, your goal should be specific. So it should be clear. Otherwise, you won't be able to focus on the efforts you feel truly motivated to achieve. And when drafting your goals, you want to answer the 5 W questions. So what do I want to actually accomplish? Why is this goal important? Who's going to be involved? Where is it located? And which resources are limited or involved? So these are all questions that you want to be thinking about when you're kind of putting this through the process of, like, let's just simply go with when we were talking about trying to gain followers. Okay, so we realize that what we want to accomplish is we want to gain followers, but how many followers? Again, why is it important that you get these followers? What are you hoping is going to accomplish from gaining them? Who's going to be involved to get these followers? Is this just going to be you? Is this a team effort? Are you planning on using, your employees? Like, a lot of people don't think about today that if you own a business and you have employees inside your business, they probably use social media. They probably know how to use the tools. You should be bringing your team on board to make them feel that gaining followers for the business should be just as much their goal as it is your goal. You should be helping them to equip them with tools to be able to share this through their own personal networks, helping them be a part of that actual marketing goal. And you're now upskilling your employee to have a better skill, and they're making your business more valuable. And you can actually start to think about, hey, maybe I can increase their pay above minimum wage because now they're more valuable to me. So this is a team effort, and I encourage everybody who has employees to utilize them to help with these kinds of things. Something as simple as, like I said, gaining followers. You might be surprised at what parts of the strategy they might actually have ideas to help you guys accomplish that. Where is it located? Thinking about specifically who you're targeting. Is it a local niche, or is it are you talking something global or outside your ecosystem? Are there possibly partners you could connect with? Are there different organizations that have a crossover for the same audience that you have? Could you possibly work out a cross-pollination deal with them where they're sharing your content through their channel and you're doing the same? So just looking at all the resources that you have, and also thinking about, like, how limited are you on those resources? And that's why I'm saying is that there are lots of ways to make it stretch and go a long ways. Either you're investing your time and energy to learn how to do this, or you're investing in people who are going to do it for you. And so you might actually have those people already in your network and you don't even know it. So that's just looking at the specifics. Moving into measurable. So this is something that, my husband and I, being in revenue operations, like we're very passionate about things that can get measured. We have a saying that, what gets measured gets accomplished. It can become very easy in social media, for instance, to measure what we like to call vanity metrics, things that don't necessarily matter. They have big numbers on them, big numbers attached to them, but they're not really moving you towards your goals. And also just actually measuring at all. Like in today's society, we pretty much are the proverbial ostrich in every different facet when it comes to our finances, when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to everything. We would rather not look at what the results are, because if we don't know what the results are, then we can't really be disappointed and or have to do something about it. So I encourage everybody to set realistic metrics in a way for you to determine, how am I going to know if I'm successful? How am I going to be able to tell? And I always used to say this when I worked in the hearing industry. People would come in, they a lot of times weren't happy right away because I just changed their world. Things got a lot louder than they expected them. There's a lot of things they don't want to hear, but their brain needed to hear that stuff in order for their brain to stretch back out to where it needed to be. And I would often tell people, what you have to tell me is neither good or bad. It's just information. It helps me determine what the next steps are. So being able to measure what you're doing with your social media helps you determine, hey, like if you run this strategy for 30 days and you don't get the results that you thought you were going to get or you want, doesn't mean that the strategy was bad. It means you got to go back to the building blocks and start to evaluate. Why didn't it work? Maybe, maybe your messaging wasn't quite on. Maybe when you wrote up the post, it was a little bit more about your business than it was about the customer. Okay, maybe we just need to tweak the messaging a little bit. Maybe, it was timing of when you posted. Like there's some different things that can be tweaked to actually maybe get the results. Doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So this is why measuring helps you. The data helps you determine what did go right and what didn't go right. So, like you should be asking yourself, how much, how many, and how will I know when I've actually accomplished this goal? Moving on to achievable. Again, your goal needs to be realistic and attainable to be successful. In other words, it should stretch your abilities, but it still needs to remain possible. When you set an achievable goal, you'll be able to identify previously overlooked opportunities or resources that can bring you closer to it. So again, how can I accomplish a goal and how realistic is the goal are constraints that you need to actually factor in, especially financial factors. Social media is becoming a huge medium of advertisement, and as it becomes a bigger medium of advertisement, it also becomes more expensive to actually buy that result. So there's so many different platforms, so many different things and metrics to actually measure that, it's likely that you're not going to find someone who's going to be able to do it for you for a budget that's next to nothing. So you're going to have to either set some money aside for that or do seminars and things like this to learn. I always tell people at the very beginning, the hardest part in the field of social media or even finding someone to do it for you is you need to be equipped enough to be able to vet someone about whether or not they know what they're talking about to get you results. They either need to demonstrate that via the fact that they have a portfolio of people they've already helped get those results, or you need to be able to have enough information to be able to ask pointed questions that's going to tell you whether or not this person took a 2-day course online and now they're a social media manager charging $3,000 a month, or do they actually have the results? And also, if you're a small business, be okay with working with an amateur in the beginning. There are tons of kids coming straight out of college, straight out of high school. You know what? You could probably pay them $50 a week, $100, a week in the beginning because they're still learning. But at least now they're earning while they're learning, and now they're excited to do that work for you. And as they grow, you're going to grow, and your business will make more money, and they might even just be a good fit to eventually bring in-house and say, hey, this person, I helped grow and mentor them into a position of an in-house marketer. So there's lots of opportunities that you can look at that you can find a budget for just about any social media goal that you want. It just depends on how fast you're going to get there and, if you're willing to actually have to put in a little bit of that work as well. Relevant. So this is a big one. I have found so many people, the biggest problem they have is they feel completely burnt out with social media because they don't have any really relevant, like their goal isn't relevant. It's just throw some mud at the wall, see what sticks. And they're constantly trying to feel like they have to keep up with every single social media platform. I would highly recommend that once you have your goal, and once we get through the part where we start talking about your target audience, you don't need to be on every single social media platform. I would recommend that, you go and get your handles for them, because you never know when you will want to utilize your brand on that channel, on that platform. But I would highly recommend that you get very specialized into one to start with and really understand what you're trying to accomplish and push your goals, because simply just pushing the same content out to every single platform is probably not going to help you gain more followers, because each platform has a different algorithm that rewards different behaviors and gets in front of different audiences. So, even though there are tools that allows you to mass push everything to every platform, that doesn't mean that that's the strategy that you should use, or expect that that's going to just, like I said, throw mud at the wall and expect something will stick. So, making sure that you're not spending hours and hours every week building beautiful graphics to put on your social media that nobody really cares. They scroll right past it after 3 seconds. I've met a lot of people. I say this a lot to Ashley because she's a UX designer, but I've met so many people that spend 6 months designing a logo and they won't spend 6 minutes designing a buy button on their website. Like, you can't expect to make sales on your website if people don't have a way to actually buy that thing. And not that your logo isn't important, but when you're first just getting started, you're not a major brand who has to worry about rebranding across multiple mediums, textiles, building signage, all these things. Like, they spend millions of dollars on their logos because when they change it, they got to change it across lots of things, and it would cost them a lot of money if they made a mistake. If you're just a small business getting started, it's likely you have to upload a new picture to your Facebook. It's not going to be that big of a deal. If you haven't, printed it on a ton of, merch or all kinds of things like that, right? So really making sure that you're thinking about, am I creating stuff that actually is going to create value for my customer, and not just creating something so that I can stick it up and say, oh, I created another cool picture. So that's, when we start talking about relevancy. And then the last one is just being time bound. So, every goal needs to have a target date. Again, this comes back into the whole measurable aspect. It's really important for you just to set a time frame on it, because it just puts you in a position to be like, on this date is the deadline. Let's look at the results. Come hell or high water, we're making a decision to go one way or the next. So that's kind of moving into the last little bit of being on the SMART goals. So after you've kind of worked through that process and you kind of know, okay, here's my goals and that, then it kind of gets back down to this problem. So a lot of times when I meet with a client, when it comes to like social media marketing, what I typically find is that I end up moving more into like a business coach versus a marketing coach, because a lot of people don't actually know the problem that their business is solving. They may have a product or a service and they know all the features and the benefits that this thing will help, but they don't really know the root problem that is really helping their customer buy. And it's typically an emotional one. So there may be a surface level thing like, let's just say, you sell lawnmowers, okay? So the problem maybe is that someone's grass is too tall and they've got to cut their lawn, and that's why they need a lawnmower. And you may look at that and be like, oh, that's the problem because they have tall grass. But the real problem is maybe they live where they have, community that their grass can't get over a certain size and they get fined. So now the underlying problem is that they need a reliable way to cut their grass regularly because they can't get fined for not having their grass grown. So it's the shame that they'll look if they're the only lawn in town that is the longest grass. It's, feeling like you don't make enough money to have somebody else come and mow your lawn for you. So all these underlying like emotional issues are really the thing that's probably going to force people to want to buy. And that's the messaging that you want to target your customers with. You don't want to target them with, hey, look at our fancy new lawnmower. It's got this engine, it's got this, it takes a 2-stroke diesel, like likely that's not going to be the thing that makes them buy. And so this is just kind of starting to shift about really thinking through what is the real problem that your customers are having and trying to take it down to an emotional level of typically the two big issues you're going to have is that if your business is helping to help them thrive, make them, better, look better, grow in status in their demeanor, or your business is helping them survive, which is usually a lot stronger motivator than even the thriving. Like if your business actually makes them stay alive, they're going to be more interested in actually buying. And so it's a more of an emotional piece to thinking about your business and the problems that it's solving. So that kind of moves us into, once you know what your problem solves, it really then starts to go down is to take the time to go through what they call building a persona. So basically building personas is just kind of thinking of made up people, but they should be realistic people of, okay, my product solves this problem. I'm a person. Who am I? What do I look like? Where do I live? How old am I? What is my salary range? What is the title of my typical job? What other issues do I typically struggle with? Who else do I associate with? So taking the time, and I've included in the Notion document like a little worksheet that does allow you to kind of go through the personas, but it helps you get to the psychographics of who are these actual people so that you can target these people online. You can make your advertisement, you can pick your keywords to all be around the kind of people that would be looking to want to use your product or service. So I just put up a couple of examples of some questions. Like, for instance, if, Akita is a fashion designer, it's like, well, what are her values? Is she in any kind of groups? What other brands does she like? I did for Molly, like, who does Molly associate with? Is she still an active person? What is Molly's discretionary funds? And then Matt, what does he do in his time off? What are his hobbies? Where does he travel? Like, these seem silly questions, but trying to figure out who these people really are is going to help you start to tailor your messaging to attract these kinds of people. And lastly is after you've figured out your target audience, the last thing you really want to do is actually start to look at your competitors. And this might even be a great place to start to find your target audience, is go find 3 businesses that are similar to yours in some way and start looking at, what are their value propositions? How are they messaging to their customers? What do you like? What are they saying that makes you be like, yeah? Because a lot of times you're likely also a customer of your business. You probably started your business because you had the problem originally and you're like, I want to solve this problem for me. And then you realize like, hey, there are other people that are probably like me that I also could, benefit from. So, there should be some things in your competitors' messaging that makes you feel like, yeah, I agree with that. But there's also stuff that you're probably like, I don't agree with that. And you want to write those out because those things that you don't agree with are likely what your customer base probably doesn't agree with as well. And you can tailor your messaging to be that way. I gotta get a drink of water, sorry. Excuse me. And then, interacting with their followers. I recommend, this is kind of like growth hacking, is your customers are probably followers of your competitors. You can go in and interact with them in Facebook groups, in Reddit messages, and kind of get some feedback why they like the brand, why they don't like the brand. Most companies, before they even start marketing, they haven't done any market research, any customer analysis to help them actually figure out what would allow them to set themselves apart differently so that they can make their messaging and their brand on point. So those are like the last 3 things I'll say for this portion of our seminar. I think that was the last page. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm going the wrong way.
So, Jazz, do you want to hop over to the Notion doc one more time?
Yeah. Okay.
If not, that's okay too. Perfect.
So, basically, we kind of set this up a little bit so that this is a web-based application. Ashley can share it with you guys. And what it allows you to do is you can either just come in and look at it, but Notion is free to create an account. And I did do a couple little drop downs here for you just to jump on there if you want. You can just use a Gmail account to create it. But what it'll allow you to do is be able to create your own workspaces so that you can actually interact with the document however you want, which means like things like, let me come down to like the checklist, for instance. If you duplicate this, then you can actually be able to check off the check boxes for yourself and follow along as we do stuff each week. And it'll also allow you to come in and be able to click off of tools like things that I like, you want to go into a little bit more depth into the SMART goals. This is kind of where I took some of the information from. Same thing with kind of understanding a little bit more for social media. But it's just kind of a way for you to kind of keep track. And the checklist is really going to be kind of like a homework before the next session kind of thing. Like if you have these things, if you've answered these questions, you're going to feel a lot more prepared for the next step, which builds upon this foundation. Because I would say this is the most unfun part of learning social media, is just kind of getting to the very like root basics that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to do this stuff because it's hard. It makes you think a lot about stuff that you're just like, can I just start making graphics? Can I just start writing stuff? I want to get to getting followers, But I encourage you, if you really build the foundation, it's going to make it so much easier when you're ready to start like putting out your graphics and creating simple guidelines like, Ashley's job doing, branding and UX design. When you have these foundational documents, you can help a client so much better because you know what they need. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, we know exactly what colors to use. We know what fonts to use. We know what graphics to use to be paired with the message, so we don't create cognitive dissonance for your customers because they're reading and seeing two different things, right? So this is something that I always tell so many people is that even if you want to turn this over, if you were a business owner and you're like, I just want to turn this over to a marketing, person, let them do it. The truth of the matter is no one knows your business the way you know your business. And they're still going to pry you for this information. So I just tell everybody it's the foundational piece. If you can get this piece put together, it's going to make their job so much easier. You're going to be happier with the work that they do. And everyone's going to be happier overall.
And if they haven't asked you for this information, that should be a red flag if you've hired someone, because they're just off creating their own version of what it should look like. And that should be very alarming to you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's honestly the hard part too with talking with creatives. And this is something that I'm passionate about because I am a creative. I've worked in the world, but I'm also a business owner. So I understand both sides. I understand the investment side as a business owner, thinking like, if I hire a professional, I want results. But I also understand on the creative side is that I cannot build 3 houses and get paid for none of them or get paid for one of them because the owner decides like, I don't really like that one. So people don't realize as creatives, when I do something, I'm actually taking time out and building that thing, and I can't get that time back. So by not being able to give them good inputs and good guidelines, they're probably not going to build the thing that you want, and you're going to be upset with it after everything's said and done, and still have to pay for that thing after everything's said and done. And this just helps every party, win, is if there's really clear goals. And, Ashley's right. Obviously as a professional, they should be asking you for this stuff. They know they need it in order to be able to give a good job. They know what they need in order to get the results that you're looking for. And if they don't, they're probably still an amateur yet. They haven't really done too much of this yet. They haven't gone down that road yet. And this is just the part that I feel like, I like to teach this to small business owners, because whether they're doing it for themselves or they decide to hire a creator to do it for them down the road, this is the piece that we can't make for, we can, but you're going to probably be upset when it's not your business anymore. You're all of a sudden not happy. And I have to do a lot of coaching too. Like, your favorite color is purple, but your clientele are, saying, no, that's not their favorite color. And, then there's a lot of coaching going down the road of being like, well, you want new customers. They get to have what they want, not necessarily what you want. Right. So it's our job to help go through why we need the target audience, because then we're saying the target audience is what's influencing our decision to pick these things, say these things, do these things. I often say this to people all the time, like, if you bought a McDonald's and you're a health conscious person and you say, well, I don't like French fries, I'm taking them off the menu. The problem is that all the customers like French fries, that's why they're there. And if they didn't, they would go eat someplace else, right? So we have to be cautious of making sure that we're building something for our customers if we are hoping to get compensation for that, and not looking to build something for what we want, what we like. And it's confirmation bias. It's really hard when you're a creator or you're the owner to not get emotionally invested in what you're creating because you want it to be for you, if the goal is for it to be for the customers and them to buy what you want them to buy. Does anybody, I guess we're kind of like into the questions.
Do
Does
we have
anybody
any
have any
questions?
questions over this topic specifically?
And feel free to type in the chat and YouTube. I can see that if anyone has questions and you're watching. You can do that way too.
I know it's a lot. It's fire hosed, like a lot of stuff, and some of it's probably like, for those of you that have had a business or you've been doing stuff, you may even already have a foundational piece. But I always like to cover this just because sometimes you never get too far away from the fundamentals and the basics if you actually want to be successful, and that's the hard part, is that most people, they want to get to all the frills, but then they forget about the basic fundamental building blocks that actually got them the beginning success to start with. So sometimes it's good to go back to the beginning, look at the fundamentals. This is like, I was talking to Mike earlier today. It's like, playing any sport, basketball, you start your first day, it's like, ooh, let's get on the court. And they're like, no, we're going to drill. It's time to do these drills. And, that's not fun, but it actually makes you a better player, makes you a better, more well-rounded person. Well, as business owners, we play the game of entrepreneurship, and it has a set of fundamental skills that we have to practice. And a lot of it is retelling our brand story. What do we do? How do we help people? Why? Going through that process. And it changes as our business grows. And sometimes we don't update our story. And all of a sudden we're like, why the heck am I getting all these customers for this thing over here? I don't even want to sell that product. Why do I keep selling it? Because our message is telling people that.
One question I have is, with goal setting about growing our customer base, I have often sort of oscillated between just not really knowing, should we be focused on trying to grow my customer base within my current market segment, really focusing on that because that segment seems to like what I have to offer, or should we try to expand my offering to expand into a larger segment or a different segment? That's more.
So like niche, outside your niche.
Outside my niche, right?
Right.
Have more disposable income, for example.
So but it would be in the same niche, but outside of your beachhead market, basically outside of like this local area, growing like outside the UP, or to be a different product.
Outside my market segment, so I like age group, for example.
Okay, what? I'm sorry.
Age group. So,
Okay.
I'm like, right now, I'm really hitting the 25 to 35-year-old
Okay.
market segment. So, the question is, should I try to hit that harder, really push into that, and really shape my marketing to really focus on that and just have my entire market be that age group?
Yep.
Or should I try to change my marketing a bit to make it more appealing to another additional market segment that might perhaps be older, that might have more disposable income?
Well, yeah. I think in like that case, especially, I think you can also think about, you don't necessarily have to do one or the other. You can really be creating a marketing strategy for the niche group that you're talking, the younger group, and then turn around and create another marketing strategy for the other group. And the reason I say that is, like, for instance, I've been working with, and I've been working like local Marquette Nutrition, right? So they have a lot of young people that come in for products that are like fitness related, to build muscle, workout, get fit. These people are probably interested in like pre-workouts, protein shakes, all of these kinds of products, right? And that audience typically lives on like something like Instagram, for instance, because that's the age bracket they're at, maybe even moving into TikTok now. Like that's what they're looking at. So they have a marketing strategy for those people. However, they've got the older demographic who are just wanting to be healthy, wellness, well-balanced. These are typically your people who are getting a little bit older. They're going to want like vitamins, health coaching, maybe some fitness coaching. And a lot of them are living more on Facebook. So they have created recently a new strategy that's going to work towards like, okay, for our older market, maybe we stop putting all of our pre-workout and our protein stuff and pushing that out on Facebook. Let's put that over on Instagram, and that's the market that we're going to run with that. And all of our messaging is consolidated to the younger group because that's probably who's on there. And at the same time, let's try to stop market to the young group on Facebook. Let's make that all about healthness. Well, because their business is really divided into areas like that. So you can figure out a strategy based on those. Again, you could do your target audience for the older group and say, what are all these people like? Where do they live? They live on this social media platform, or they are on this marketing platform. And you design a marketing strategy specifically targeted to growing that audience. And at the same time, you could be simultaneously growing the other audience.
Just always keep in mind not to overstretch yourself.
Mhm.
So it's better to do it, do one thing well
Yep.
than do 5 things not so great. So if you feel comfortable with where you're at with your current market and you feel like you can keep that one going, you've established like a good routine, the plan's all laid out, it's already going, then you bring on number 2, the second strategy where you're targeting that next age group and have both of them going. And then you feel comfortable again, well, maybe you expand to a third market. So just make sure that if you are going to do that second strategy, that you feel really well and comfortable to continue doing that original one, because you don't want to lose your original customers. A lot of people make that mistake where they'll just stop paying attention and assume that those people are going to stick around. That's not always the case. There's so much competition today that you always have to be aware and continually putting out that information to get in front of those people. So I would just say, make sure you feel comfortable doing both.
But if you set down these goals and you actually have a very clear, like specific thing that you're trying to do with each of those niche, it's going to be a lot easier to do. And I also would assume that maybe even diversifying, if you know that the majority of your income could come from this other bracket, you could actually do a little bit in that sector and still make as much as you're doing in this. And if that one overturns this one, well, then put more effort on here, and this becomes your maintenance one. Hey, I'm going to keep building it, but it's not my money generator, or eventually you bring in someone to apprentice with you and you have that person managing that one area, making the content for it. And that might be helpful, especially if like you have someone who's younger working for you, and like, oh, they're really just going to fit it. Or I like that. Maybe you can find someone who's a little bit older because they're going to identify, they're going to be able to find content easier, all of those things. Like I would put the person who's the most like the group, the audience, in charge of that audience, because they're already going to be inspired by things that'll motivate that group of people probably.
That kind of answers the question. Awesome. Great question. And again, to repeat for everyone online, that question was, if you have one current market that you've been advertising to, and you want to expand out to another market, is that okay? How would you approach that?
Yeah, and I think it's always great to just do like even little beta, beta tests. You don't have to go full in. You don't have to have like a 6-month strategy. You can literally have, hey, listen, for 30 days, what could I, and I like to do this as just challenges for myself sometimes, so that I don't put a lot of pressure on myself, because if in 30 days it didn't work out, okay, I move on. But it's just nice sometimes to put like a little 30-day challenge. Hey, what's one thing I could do that would entice this audience that I think would be something that I could do? And if it's, like I said, I think it's best, especially if you're targeting like age brackets, to really be thinking about what channels you're trying to use, because that's one of the easiest ways to segment these different marketing strategies and not making it too complicated. At least you're not trying to segment 2 things that are for the same type of people, which you could you could do it, but I think it would be a lot harder to do, because you're now having to try to make sure you're not mixing your messages between those 2 strategies on the same channel. But if you were trying to do something like you are with like the age bracket, 100% I would go with a route like, one channel and another channel, and just run them simultaneously to see how that messaging works.
Any other questions from anyone? Perfect.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
What is Discord?
Discord is, have you heard of Slack? No. It's basically like a online messenger platform. So
What is it called, Discord?
it's just the name of the company. Yeah.
Because that's such a negative connotation.
It does.
It's counterintuitive.
It started as a video game.
Conversation is. So everything that's marketing that came from here, that conversation will continue here. But if you want to talk about, financial, but next week, let's say that was one of the seminars we're doing, we could jump into the financial conversation and that channel and keep the conversation. So
Or
the
you
cool part
can
is
scroll up
later
later.
and actually,
Oh, okay, here's what's going on, and understand the conversation that's been going on for maybe weeks or months versus when you're just having a random general chat around anything. Now you're searching for like, where the heck did I see that? And there's actually ways for,
The resource thing is
Yeah.
fantastic. One of the biggest things when people are out there, like,
yeah,
if you're asking a certain question, and then I had mentioned, hey, Spencer, you talked about this, I found a resource, and I ping you, now I direct right to it, it's quick, it's fast, it's easy. And then everyone else actually has access to it as well. So like, because then you have other people, it's really a community, helping community.
So you can actually kind of see what the platform looks like here.
Perfect.
So one of the things, for instance, what we do on Fridays, Founders Friday here at Campfire, say something popped up in your mind that you've heard, but the meeting cut short. You don't have a chance to talk about it. Anybody who's a member of those meetings, the hashtag's down there, you can hashtag that specific meeting that you go to, now you can communicate with those people after the fact and re-engage back in those ideas.
I will. I just went
It's
to
pretty neat. I think that's the biggest thing, is allowing people to connect. It's like, oh, man, you should email me, probably, politely stalk me on LinkedIn and Facebook. Is that really you? I don't know. Like, right? It streamlines the communication process, and it's multi-dimensional, multimedia.
Yeah.
It supports all different types of.
All right, so we're going to wrap up the live broadcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you're watching the replay again, please be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel, follow us on socials so you have an idea of our next upcoming events. We will be redoing this same broadcast on Friday. Next week, we will be moving on to week 2. And again, you can do the in-person if you'd like, show up at the door. It is $5 for non-members. Members get in for free. And we look forward to seeing everyone then. If you have any questions, hop in that Discord. You should be able to grab the link below. And we thank you for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone.